Good morning. This is the next in our series of frequently asked questions we receive at Caltha. This morning I'm going to be discussing a question that we receive fairly frequently. Is a Phase 2 investigation always required if a Phase 1 environmental site assessment report identifies recognized environmental conditions? To understand the answer to that question, we have to understand a little bit more about the environmental review process. The process starts with a Phase 1 environmental site assessment. This is a standard assessment. We're not collecting any samples. We're simply looking at historical records, government records, and actually doing an on-site inspection of a piece of property. The purpose is to identify what are referred to as recognized environmental conditions, which are indicators that there is the likelihood of contamination on a piece of property. If no recognized environmental conditions, or RECs, are identified, then the process ends. However, in some cases, a Phase 1 will identify recognized environmental conditions. And it's important to understand that this is not just simply one type of REC, but there's actually three different types of RECs that we need to understand. The first is a current recognized environmental conditions. This is a condition that is identified that points to a higher likelihood of contamination on a piece of property. What's important to understand is that this does not include what's referred to as de minimis conditions. Simply because we have a few oil spots on a concrete floor does not necessarily mean there are recognized environmental conditions. The second category is historical recognized environmental conditions. In this case, there has been evidence of contamination on the property or near the property in the past. However, that contamination has been cleaned up or addressed somehow to the satisfaction of the state agencies. This is mainly closed sites. These may be closed leaking tank sites or other closed contamination sites. The last category is a subset of historical recognized environmental conditions, and that's referred to as controlled recognized environmental conditions. In this case, in order to close the past contamination on the property or on nearby properties, the agency has required certain controls be placed to assure that any contamination that remains is still controlled and would not present a harm to human health or the environment in the future. This may include land use restrictions, for example. It's important to understand that there are three categories of recognized environmental conditions because only one category, the first, would take us to a Phase 2 limited site investigation. So with the understanding of the three categories or three buckets that we have to work with, let's go back to our environmental review process. So as I had just indicated, recognized environmental conditions that are identified in a Phase 1 report will send us to a Phase 2 limited site investigation. Now, that's not to say that the other two categories of RECs don't have some potential liabilities that you need to consider. So, taking a look at the historical recognized environmental conditions, again, this is cases where in the past there has been contamination on or near the property. The question that you need to answer is how will any existing contamination on the property impact my use of the site? Lastly, the controlled environmental conditions, again being a subset of historical RECs. In addition, we need to ask what must I do in order to maintain the control that's required on the site in order to keep the contamination site closed as far as the agency is concerned. I hope this has been useful in understanding a little more clearly on when a Phase 2 environmental site assessment is required. If you do have any follow-up questions, please feel free to contact Caltha at our office, or you can get a hold of us through our website. Have a good day.